Water now?
What's up?
What do they put in their water now? Fluoride. Where do they get the fluoride? From aluminum.
Yeah, fluoride. Fluoride is a toxic industrial byproduct, and the men that handle the fluoride barrels are wearing full hazmat gear until they pour it into the pipe that feeds the city, and then everything's fine. Fluoride is also how the Germans, how a handful of German soldiers, maybe 10 or 13 German soldiers, could keep 1,000 people in a prison camp completely calm and relaxed and just usher them towards the gas chambers, because they'd been giving them so much fluoride, the people couldn't, rise up. So
back to
I'm going to step off the pedestal, the soapbox now.
the DC power.
DC power going in here. Any type you want to play with.
And it doesn't matter
panels.
which is positive, which is negative?
In this condition, no, it doesn't. I set this up to be positive and this up to be negative, and I've got my negative pole in the center and my positive on the edges, and that's all.
Is there any
so it doesn't really
reason
matter.
to go one way or the other?
It only matters if you're going to be in an area where you could brush up, where the edge of your machine could brush up against the ground. So let's say you were building something like this and you're putting it into a car. You'd want to position your positive and your negative so that it didn't, so that it couldn't brush, so that your positive could not brush up against the frame of your vehicle. Mm-hmm. So that's the only criteria, but that's more of a installation concern rather than a design concern.
Right.
So I like this way. It's personal preference, but I like how this generates gas. There are subtle differences, but that takes like about a year of working with the gas to start to see the subtle differences, and different people resonate with different setups. So this is the way I like.
Is there any entrainment, or not? That's not the word I'm looking for.
Conditioning?
Conditioning involved in this?
Not involved with this. There's conditioning with this, and this is a conditioning process, and I can describe that real quick. Conditioning the plates in a system like this, you power it with a little bit over current, a little bit more energy than you would normally power, and you cannot power it with pulsed DC. But you condition the plates by running them with a whole lot of sodium hydroxide and some gold and some of my electric water, and you let the water run. You let the water boil away. You don't replenish it. You let it all run out. And what that does is it puts a nice layer of you can't see it on these, but it puts a nice conditioning layer on the plate, and then you do it again.
Layer of
catalyst. Put a nice conditioned layer of catalyst. Essentially, what you're doing is you're conditioning the first molecule, the first atoms of each plate. You're conditioning them with a material that's going to encourage the production of hydrogen. It's going to take it to the point of separation, and then your electricity pushes it over. So that's what we're going on here. I know that your system works a little bit differently using
the plates. You have to be sanded before.
That's how you condition this. That's a secret. Okay, secret. Boy, I'm no good at keeping. Actually, I'm really good at.
You actually sand the plates first, right?
What's that?
You sand the plates first.
Do you sand the plates?
I do sand the plate. Actually, I don't sand the plates anymore. Let me show you what I do real quick.
That's kind of like anodizing aluminum. You're creating a hard surface or a different surface on it.
Yeah. Let me tell you real quick here. What I just described was letting the water run out, during the conditioning process instead of replenishing it and keeping it full. That is something that took me a lot of years to learn, because I would condition it. It'd take me a week to properly condition a plate. The protocols are on, actually they're on PesWiki right now in a lot of Bob Boyce's work. So, but when I learned that if you let the water level drop over as it's running, and then when you fill it back up, it's going to run even better. But that's only with my gold catalyst. That's not with regular sodium hydroxide. Follow the normal conditioning procedures that Bob laid out with sodium hydroxide, and you'll be fine. But anyway, what I do now, instead of sanding, Because I've been working in production levels, I have to find the fastest way to do this. So when I was doing these, I was running about 3 minutes of proper sanding and conditioning, or proper sanding and prepping of each plate, okay? And that was just way too slow when you're doing a 120 plate system or something like that. Just takes way too long. So what I actually found was that if I took a wire brush, I don't know if you can see that on the camera.
Yeah, you can.
Took a wire brush on my drill motor.
It actually shows up better on the camera than it does.
Really? Oh, nice. I took a wire brush on my drill motor and just... And what's interesting is this is it looks very similar to the tree of, or the flower of life diagrams they found in Egypt. So I really like this way of conditioning the plates, and I do that to all my plates. I just, and I can do a plate in about 20, 30 seconds, completely scratched or prepped for the box. So, and then I just liked it. I like the pattern so much. I did all my ends with it too. So, anyway, I think you can even see it on that one there too.
Just for aesthetics.
One more question on that.
Yes.
I've asked you before. I didn't understand.
Okay.
Does that go in water? Or
This is not
go
going in
just
water.
like it is?
This is what we call a dry cell. The water is only inside. And inside the circle, okay? So you see the circle
Right,
here.
I remember now.
So we're going to put water in here. There's little holes drilled in the bottom of the plates, and that's what communicates the water to the center. And then the hydrogen is generated, comes out the holes in the top, and escapes there. So this is what we call a dry cell.
When you say hydrogen, you're talking hydroxy?
Hydrogen and oxygen, excuse me.
Hydroxy,
Brown's gas, whatever you want to call it. There's a conflict between the Brownsians and the Rhodians, and they're saying, no, it should be called Brown's gas, no, it should be called Rhodes gas, no, it should be called, there's super gas now and whatnot. Rhodes pioneered the work, started it out, much as you see me doing this here. Brown took the work and quantified it. There's actually things that I can't say about Brown and his work with the hydrogen because it's not mine to give away. It's somebody else fed it to me under confidentiality. But let me just say that what I talked about in my lecture about water, about the different parts of water, is so important for proper Brown's gas research. That there are different parts of water. If you distill a gallon jug into 4 quarts, every quart will have its own characteristics, and you want to use certain quarts. You actually want to use the first 2 quarts that come off, and the last 2 for an alchemist are what we call fixed. You don't want to use the last 2 quarts. You want to use the first 2 quarts. Use the last 2 quarts for watering your plants or something.
To give a plug for
it. You say 2 gallons of water, you distill it from you get it from a nice stream and distill it. What do you mean by distill it?
Okay, before we answer that question,
Boil it and pull it off?
Hold
can
on.
you pause for a second, please? Just to give a plug for where people can get those DVDs of your presentation, go to TeslaTech.info, and those will be available shortly where you can purchase the DVD of your presentation. And I would recommend doing it. It was a fascinating presentation you gave yesterday.
Thank you. I'm really excited because this is the first time in 3 years that they've actually got a copy of my presentation. For the last, it was the last 3 years. Somehow the copy of my lecture was destroyed. Either the sound was completely garbled, it was unintelligible, or the video just didn't show up. I find that very ironic, very interesting.
So they already produced it.
This one they know. As a matter of fact, they set up a special camera in there. It was completely independent of everything else, recording it, just to make certain that everything worked out right. Okay, your question is, how do you distill water? You can distill water. You can there's a stainless steel plastic shell on the outside, stainless steel on the inside. You can distill water, any type of water, but if you distill reverse osmosis water, it'll be much cleaner on your distiller unit. So you just pour the water in, it distills off, and like I said, for Brown's gas work, you want to take the first 2 quarts that come off. Okay? Brown had a little bit different way of separating his water, which, like I said, I can't talk about it because I have to honor my, my covenant of silence. No, I have to honor my, the confidentiality. So, anyway, so the first 2 quarts of water are what you want to use in all these systems. The other quarts you want to add to your gardens or water your plants with, or because they're what an alchemist would call fixed. They're harder to separate. The first 2 are very volatile, and they're much more attuned to what we have here. So, that said,
so you're using the first 2 quarts coming from the distiller to run in this process.
Yes. Yeah.
And so
you can actually, for this process, you could throw in spring water.
And that's good. I mean, you would think, well, you're going to use the first 2, but what you're saying is don't use the 3rd, 4th, and 5th in your batch. That goes on the garden.
That's right.
Only use the first 2, and if you want to make 6 quarts, you're going to have to do this 3 times to get the first 2 quarts off of each process.
That's
correct?
Right. That's right. And that was one of the things that really launched some of my hydrogen work. When I realized that the water itself that I was using was very important. Not all distilled water is created equal.
So would you say that this alchemical process you've discovered that's a crucial component or something that is a make or break?
This will work without it.
Okay.
I mean, all hydrogen will work without it. You can just use distilled water. You just use whatever you want to. In this one, you can throw in spring water. You can throw in salt ocean water if you're really adventurous. But what I found to make really good gas and to have really dynamic and powerful effects, if you use the first 2 quarts of water, the first 2 sections of water, you will find a more powerful gas. You'll find it separates more easily, that type of thing.
So it's a preference, not a requirement.
Someday it may be a preference, because I'll tell you what, how many people are, someday it may be a requirement, not a preference, because how many people are remediating nuclear waste like Brown just did? Is there anybody? People have tried it and they can't do it. But if you use this other system, you can.
Really?
Yeah.
I lost that.
Because Brown did not talk about where he was getting his water.
Okay.
Brown did not talk about the type of water he was using. That was his secret.
So let's get back into the procedure of running this thing. We've talked about the preparation of the water. We talked about the hooking up of the DC. What are the considerations? Is there a pump involved in running the...
Voltages you want to run, if you set it up the way I've done it, you run a 12-volt solar panel. And no panels are 12 volts. They're actually like 8 or 16, and that's fine. Just hook up the solar panel, run it to it. If you're running this, like this over here, you're going to daisy chain your solar panels together and generate 120 volts and put it into it. But for this one, a 12-volt, this design that I've created here, a 12-volt solar panel. I'm not really concerned about the amperage. It'll take as much as it wants, and you won't overload your panel. And just have at it. So 12 volts or 18 volts or whatever it's called. If you don't get up to 20 volts, because that's or 24, excuse me, a 24 volt panel, just stick with the regular panels that you can use to charge batteries. An RV solar panel or a couple of them work together, that's fine. So, or a DC power supply. A lot of generators have DC power supplies now. You just hook up, click from the generator, and away you go.
Now, a layperson, how much are you filling this all the way to the top with water?
Well,
and how are you telling how far to fill it up?
See my little line there? I'm not filling it all the way up. I'm not filling it up to these electrodes. Basically, I just measured how much water was going to fill in here. I figured about 1.5 gallons, and 1.5 gallons, it's a little bit high. Next time I'll use about 1.25 gallons, so that the water's below the plates, but it doesn't really matter as long as you're not filling it all the way up and allowing this electrode to interact with that electrode. Because then you're going to lose a lot of your power here, and you want to focus your power here.
Right. Involved in this.
Not involved with this. There's conditioning with this, and this is a conditioning process, and I can describe that real quick. Conditioning the plates in a system like this, you power it with a little bit over current, a little bit more energy than you would normally power, and you cannot power it with pulsed DC. But you condition the plates by running them with a whole lot of sodium hydroxide and some gold. Mm-hmm. So that's the only criteria. But that's more of a installation concern rather than a design concern. Right. So I like this way. It's personal preference, but I like how this generates gas. There are subtle differences, but that takes like about a year of working with the gas to start to see the subtle differences, and different people resonate with different setups. So this is the way I like.
Is there any entrainment, or not? That's not the word I'm looking for.
Conditioning.
Conditioning involved.
German soldiers could keep 1,000 people in a prison camp completely calm and relaxed, and just usher them towards the gas chambers, because they'd been giving them so much fluoride, the people couldn't, rise up. So
back to...
I'm going to step off the pedestal of the soapbox now.
The DC power.
DC power going in here. Any type you want to play with.
And it doesn't matter which is positive, which is negative?
In this condition, no, it doesn't. I set this up to be positive.
Water now?
What's that?
What do they put in their water now? Fluoride. Where do they get the fluoride from? Aluminum.
Yeah, fluoride is a toxic industrial byproduct, and the men that handle the fluoride barrels are wearing full hazmat gear until they pour it into the pipe that feeds the city, and then everything's fine. Fluoride is also how the Germans, how a handful of German soldiers, maybe 10 or 13, this up to be negative, and I've got my negative pole in the center and my positive on the edges, and that's all.
Is there any
so it doesn't really
reason
matter.
to go one way or the other?
It only matters if you're going to be in an area where you could brush up, where the edge of your machine could brush up against the ground. So let's say you were building something like this and you're putting it into a car. You'd want to position your positive and your negative so that it didn't, so that it couldn't brush, so that your positive could not brush up against the frame of your vehicle.